I have a question for you. What's one of the most effective ways to improve as an artist? Well, I also have an answer for you. I recently saw this portrait by John Singer Sargent at the Denver Art Museum, and this piece was a quick study of a girl by the name of Rosina Ferraro, whom Sargent had met during his summer in Capri, Italy, at the age of 22. This very quick study, done on a piece of cardboard, is unfortunately better than anything I've ever painted in my life. So we're going to do a master study. What is a master study, you might be asking? It's a great question. A master study is pretty simple. It's a copying of a master's work in essence, it's copying another artist's work, but with intention. Doing a master study usually entails researching that master and understanding at least a little bit what their approach was to making the painting, and then trying to mimic that approach to develop your own skill and style. These master studies can be an absolutely crucial tool in getting your art to the next level. We can learn so much about a master's approach by studying their style, and in turn, we can utilize some of these skills that we've learned and put them into our own work in the future. So I'm going to get started on mine. I started my study not on a canvas, but on a sketchbook. I wanted to get a feel for the piece by first just recreating it in pencil. As you'll see in a moment, I screwed this up pretty bad. I got all the proportions way off, and it looks really goofy. It was a bit frustrating, but this is actually a good thing. Because I started with this sketch, I got a lot of initial mistakes out of the way. After spending some time comparing my sketch to Sargent's painting, I identified the problem areas and moved on to sketching the final on a small canvas with a renewed sense of confidence and direction. As a result, this second try turned out much better. Okay, so that was the easy part, arguably. Now comes the really scary stuff, actually painting it. I began by ever so lightly toning the canvas to get away from such a pure white. Now, as I start to lay in the shadow shapes, I want to briefly talk about why this piece captures me. This portrait by Sargent is a mainstay at the Denver Art Museum, and every time I go, I find myself looking at it for quite a while, longer than most of the other pieces. Despite the subject's lack of movement, the piece has such a gestural quality to it, and it's instantly readable. But as you get closer, you'll realize just how much detail isn't really there. Rather, it's implied through very carefully designed shapes, which was a staple of Sargent's style. The piece also exhibits the incredibly subtle value and color shifts that Sargent was so well regarded for, which I'll get into more in a moment. I had a few colors pre-mixed at this point, which is something Sargent did quite meticulously, as he didn't want to overblend on the canvas. However, here's where I once again made a bit of a mistake, though I didn't realize it at the time. If you look here in these spots around the eye, there's a substantial jump in color saturation. After looking at the painting a bit more, I've realized that this is because Sargent almost definitely toned the whole head with this color to start. You can actually see it poking through the upper layers of paint everywhere. This vibrant orangey undertone would have provided a great base to start with. This would have allowed Sargent to build up the skin with the less vibrant paint mixes, focusing more on the value, while the color variability sort of took care of itself in some areas. Regardless of this blunder, I continued on, building up towards the lightest parts of the face and blending as I went. Aside from these distinct shadow shapes, the lighting on the face is quite soft and subdued, which makes it much more difficult to easily describe forms. This is where that precise value control I talked about earlier would really come into play, as getting a value even a tiny bit off could entirely change the perceived shape of the face. While this part was tough, it came together quite quickly. And next, I just had to clarify some focal areas with finer detail, like the eyelash, the nose, and the lips. Next, I painted in the hair. What's interesting about the hair on this portrait is that it's entirely one color. Sargent drove focus towards the facial features by omitting almost all detail in the hair and instead only focusing on the silhouette that it made. All right, it's been about an hour and a half and we're nearing the end. I just have to paint the flowers in the hair and then refine the silhouette of the face. You can see in the original that Sargent fine-tuned the face shape by painting the background color back over the top of the previous layers of paint. I did the same thing here. And then finally, after a little while of letting the paint dry just a little bit, I came back with a clean brush and blended a few areas a little bit more. And now just like that, it's done. I think that what I came out with was a really good painting, especially if you don't look at the original next to it. But regardless, this was a really fun and insightful little exercise, and I'm glad that I took the time. And as for you, find a painting that you really like, that really resonates with you, that impresses you, by a master or anyone, and go do a master study.